is someone who is financially rich is an owner. They're not a consumer. They're a consumer also. But when somebody is poor, they're a consumer. All they do is they take I always tell people we're all financial traders. And people say, I'm not a financial trader. Yes, you are. You're trading time for money. And that's the worst trade you can ever make in your life. Somebody who's wealthy has made money their slave. They're no longer the slave to money. And the way they do that is they figured out how to become an owner. And the way you do that in the most simplistic way, I even taught it in my first book, was you have to decide there's a percentage of money that you're going to keep forever. You're not going to give it to Kate Spade or Ferrari or anybody else. You can do that too. But there's a percentage of that income that never will be touched, that you will grow and compound and will provide income the rest of your life so you don't have to work. Now, when I was growing up, everybody's goal was get rich enough so you never have to work. Now, like all my friends are 15, 18 years my senior. People like Steve Wynn in most of Las Vegas, he's like 74. Warren Buffett's 85. Peter Gruber, one of my dearest friends in the world, owns the Golden State Warriors, the LA Dodgers. We're partners in the LAFC football team in LA. Brilliant guy, 74 years old. And they're all working harder now than they ever were, and they don't have to work. So the goal is make enough money so you don't have to work, and then you'll do what you love, and you'll pour your time and energy into it. But you have to make that decision. The first most important decision is I'm going to become an owner of American business. You don't want to have an Apple phone and not own Apple. And you don't want to just own Apple. Any company can go up and down. You want to own the index. You want to own a variety with enough diversification. But if you can just shift, and I've taught people who told me they have no money, they can't save. It's really easy once you get momentum. There's a research project I did with a gentleman who was nominated for the Nobel Prize on behavioral finance. And what he did was he said, if you can even, you need to save 15% ideally. But if you could even save 3%, because anybody can do that. They took a group of blue collar workers in the Midwest and said, we're going to force you to save 3%. I think it was 3.25 or 3.5. But then everybody can go on a diet tomorrow. Everybody can save money tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So his tool was, all right, you're not going to save today, you're going to save tomorrow. We'll do the 3.5%, but then you go to your employer and say, the next time I get a raise, the first 5% goes to my savings account, to my investing account. And then every time you get a raise, you do that. Well, in 14 years, the average person was saving 15%, and the top 40% were saving 20%. Well, let me explain what that means. You and I were together before. When I'm trying to explain compounding to people, everybody understands it intellectually. But when I ask some of the richest people in the world, what are most investors failing to do? And they all say they're not tapping the power of compounding. So if you're in a situation where, as an example, let's take you've got $100,000 that you've saved, you're 35 years old, and you put it in the market and just leave it there and never add anything to it. If you leave it in the market and you're only being charged 1% in fees, at retirement 35 years later, you got $762,000 from that 100. Never added a dime, it grew that much.
Wow.
But if you pay 3% in fees, which is the average most people are paying, when you ask people what they're paying, they don't know, or they say 1%. Because when you hear about it, fees, let's say a mutual fund fee, you'll always hear 1%. That's the expense ratio. There are 17 other fees. So every 1% you overpay, 1% is the average. But if you pay 2 or 3, and the average mutual fund is 3.12, sounds like nothing, 1 or 2%. But every 1% you overpay because of compounding means you lose a decade of income. So the person who paid 1% has $762,000. The person who paid 3% has $452,000, and they own the same stocks. It's just fees. So while we compound our interest, we also compound fees. So if you could save 3% and build it to 5, 10, 15, or you start with 10 or 15 and eventually get to 20, the best example I can give your viewers is that there's a gentleman who worked for UPS who literally never made more than $14,000 a year. You heard about him in the book. And when he retired, he had $70 million. And he gave away $35 million while he was alive. And the reason was, a friend of his set him aside and said, look, I'm gonna make you rich. He goes, I'm never gonna be rich. I make 14 grand a year. He goes, I'm gonna make you rich. I'm gonna make you rich later in life, and I'm gonna do it by a 20% tax to your business. And he goes, I make 14,000 a year. I can't live on 20% less. His friend said to him, if the IRS came and said at 20% more tax, you'd scream, you'd yell, and you'd pay it. And he said, but we're gonna pay it for you. And that 20% compounded generated $70 million. So for the people that are at home, the sooner you start, the better off you are, because compounding does it. I've got an example in the book of a guy that starts at 19, he puts aside $300 a month. He stops at 27. So he does it for 8 years. He only puts in, I think it was $35,000. But it's $1 million by leaving in the market when he turned 65 and he stopped at 28. He has a best friend that starts at 28, invests his entire life, puts in $180,000, and he has less money at the end. The sooner you start, the better you are.
Yeah.
As they go to a mutual fund.
Yeah.
They think it sounds logical. I'm no good at this. This is not my skill, a person says. You go to a professional who runs a mutual fund, what do? They figure out a series of investments to make, they put it in the fund, and they do it for you. And you think, oh gosh, they're smarter than I am, they'll do well. You assume that, but the truth is they charge so much that even if they did have an advantage, they lose it. I interviewed David Swenson, who's the head of Chief Investment Officer at Yale. It took Yale 200 years to get $1 billion that they say. He turned it into $25 billion in 2 decades. Unheard of. He's the greatest institutional investor of all time. And one of the things that he told me, he said, Tony, you just got to understand something. He said, you're never going to earn your way to wealth. He said, how many people have you seen, movie stars, actors, athletes? You know, the other day, 50 Cent just went broke, right? He made $100 million on vitamin water alone. Somebody gave him a tip, and he had half a billion dollars, and he's broke, completely broke. Mike Tyson made $500 million and went broke. Yeah. You can understand that a little bit. You can make a fortune. Elton John didn't go bankrupt because it's different rules in England, but he got in trouble. Who I just saw the other day is, what's his name? The Pirates of the Caribbean. What's his name?
Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp. Yeah. Johnny Depp's going bankrupt right now.
Really?
Johnny Depp.
He's making like 20, 30 million a year.
Yeah, Johnny Depp was worth $700 million, $750 million. He's on the verge of bankruptcy right now, can't pay his bills. He was paying $30,000 a month on wine alone, right?
My gosh.
He spent $3 million to take Hunter Thompson's body, burn it, put the dust into this giant cannon and shoot his dust into space, $3 million. It doesn't matter how much money you earn, you can always get rid of it and lose it. Buy an island and watch how quick it disappears.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So what I show people is, what you really want to do is create an income for life without working. The goal, if you own a business, and I would assume a lot of your viewers are business owners or getting started in business, no matter how good you are in business, think about this. The one universal rule that idiots in finance know is diversification. It's the only free lunch. You got to diversify. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, no matter how good the basket is, one day that real estate market, that stock market, that bond market, that collectibles market, whatever you invest in, Ray Dalio showed me statistically, it'll drop 50 to 70% on a day. Now, if you're later in life when that happens, it's over for you. Right. So you have to diversify, and yet most people, they know real estate, so they do it, or they know stocks, they do it, or they grew up with their parents flipping things, and it's the wrong thing to do. So you've got to diversify in order for you to be able to truly succeed, and that's why when you own a business, if you put all your money in your business, which is what most of us do naturally,
it's a lot of risk.
You put all your eggs in one basket, and there's things that can happen. I mean, you know, let's say you spent 20 years and you figured out how to put together the ultimate map, you know, and you remember Garmin came out with this thing called the TomTom. I don't know if you remember, you used to put on your, are you old enough to remember that? You used to put on your phone? Or you used to put on your dash. Cost $100. It was a breakthrough.
They were making like 100 million or something.
They were. 6 months later, what happened?
The iPhone came out with Google Maps.
These little bastards, excuse my French, came out with it, put Google Maps, put their own map on here, and it costs how much? Zero. What's that going to do to your business when someone takes your product or service and gives it away for free? So I always tell people, competition happens, technology happens. What you must do is have a second business with no moving parts, no people, no time. Maybe it takes you 3 days a year for 2 or 3 hours after you've read the book. You put it in place and you measure it 2 or 3 times a year. That's it. Go on with your life. Now, if there's a trouble in your business, you're financially set. In my life, have 31 companies now. We have, what do we have? 1,200 employees, 7 different industries. We do $5 billion in sales. I mean, that used to be, me and my seminar business. It's grown geometrically. But with all those moving parts, the only way I've been able to succeed is because I've taken every one of those businesses and I've diversified my assets so that when things were in trouble, I still had enough economics to take care of myself and keep the business going. So everybody needs to create a money machine that works while you sleep, that doesn't have moving parts, and that's what this is really about. That chapter is really about teaching people that winter is coming. We all know winter's coming, right, to coin a phrase. But that winter is the best time on earth. That's counterintuitive, and I don't mean like being a positive thinker. I mean pure facts. So in the book, I take you through 10 facts. I'll give you a couple of them right now. The first fact I give people is, why do people not invest? They're afraid of failing. If you're a millennial, right? So you grew up witnessing 2008 when you were still relatively young. So you're a young man and you're watching the world melting down in front of you. For most millennials, they are the first generation since the generation that went through the Depression that is not investing at the ratio they need to, even close. So what I tell them is, listen, paying off your debt's not enough. You've got to become an owner or you're always going to be in that place. So yes, pay off your debt, but here's what you need to know. You got to become an owner. You got to get in the game, but you got to understand the rules of the game. You don't know the rules of the game. The old phrase is, when a person with experience meets a person with money. We know the phrase, person with money ends up with the experience.
Right,
the person with experience ends up with your money, right?
Yeah.
So I teach people the rules of the game so they don't get screwed. But the most important thing is this. Winter's coming, but people react. So let's take last year. Last January, 2016, we had the worst stock market opening in the history of the stock market. Worst first, I think, was 10 days. There was a drop of $2.3 trillion with a T. Everybody's freaking thinking the bear market's here, the market's over, the crash is here. I think the market dropped 800 points one day, and on that day, all the richest people in the world went to Davos, Switzerland, for the big conference that they do every year. And they went there, MSNBC went there, and everybody's freaking, what's happening, what are we gonna do? And they said, let's go ask Ray Dalio now. Your listeners may or may not know who Ray Dalio is. If you're not in the financial business, you've probably never heard of him. You've probably heard of Warren Buffett, but Ray Dalio's done more. You have a $5 billion net worth and $100 million to give him, or he wouldn't talk to you 10 years ago. Now he doesn't give a shit how much money you have, he won't talk to you because he's got a closed fund. But they go and they put Dalio on television, CNBC, he's the king. What do we do? And he says, well, you don't need to panic. Corrections happen all the time, but you need a strategy that when markets go up and down, you don't go up and down. And he said, I spent 15 years of my life to perfect such a strategy. All of my money's in that plan. And he said, it's called All Seasons, and I've never revealed it before, but I gave it to Tony Robbins. He extracted from me, and it's his book. So you got to go read his book. This is what he says on national television the day the markets are crashing. And that day, to give you an idea, which is the beginning of February, I think it was 9 days into February, the market was down 9% in the first 5 weeks of the year. His strategy, which he gave me, which has made money 85% of the time for the last 75 years. Wow. It's averaged a 10% return, just under, and the average loss, when at 15% loss, was 1.6. Right. So if you go to Vegas and you could spend 85% of the time make money, and when you made money it was 10%, your loss is 1.6, you could go forever. His plan made 2% while the market was down 9%. So it was up 11% difference. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the only strategy to do. There's many. His is the smoothest ride with the least risk. But what it did was, combination of that, and then right after that, I interviewed Fed Chair Alan Greenspan. He was the head of our economy, the most powerful man in finance for 19 years, 4 presidents. He was there running. I was just with President Clinton this last week. He was the Fed Chair for him. And I interviewed him for like 2 hours, or 3 hours off stage, 2 hours in front. And then I asked him in the very beginning of this thing, I said to him, I said, look, if you could be put the Fed today, what would you do? And he looks at me, and as I said, he leans forward and he says, resign. So I look at that and go, oh my God, I need to write a book that'll free people. So here's what will free you. Everybody's afraid of the crash. So here's what you need to know, 2 terms you should understand. Correction versus crash. Anytime the market drops from its high by 10% or more up to 20, it's called a correction. If it drops 20% or more up to 80%, like in the Great Depression, then it's called a crash, or called a bear market. So how often does a correction happen? How often do we have to be prepared for it? Since 1900, we've had a correction on average every year for 116 years. So when is winter coming? This year on average.
Every
it's
year.
like, how often does winter come? You wouldn't be surprised if it storms and rain. Now, some winters are long, some are short, some are harsh, some are light, but winter always comes. So I wasn't panicked when this happened last year. I'm not panicked whenever it happens because I know it's supposed to be. How long does it last? Average, 56 days. Okay, so just under 2 months. What's the average drop during that time? 14% over the last 30 years, 13.5 over the last 100 years. So I use the more recent one. 14% gets your attention. Right? 14% you get a gut check. But here's what you need to know. 80% of all corrections never become a bear market. 80%. So all this fear, and what people do is what you said you did, is they see it, it's freaking out, I'm losing money, I'm the hell out of here, and they get out. The stock market never took a dime from anybody, only you can take it from you. You sold That's why you lost.
Right.
So if you look back and say, what was it like in 2008? I can remember vividly being with my platinum partners and saying, you see these $80 stocks? This is 6 months before the crash. I told them in April, I brought them to Dubai and I said, these stocks are gonna go to 8 and some are gonna go to $1. And by October, and I told them what to do, so they were able to get out. October, I go on the Today Show in October of 2008 and they go, Tony, there's been $3 trillion meltdown. Pump the country up, you got 4 minutes. like,
ready to go.
That's not what I do, first of all. And I said, that'd be a lie. I'm not gonna pump up. At that point, the $80 stocks were 8. I said, some of those, I said, I'm not a market forecaster, but I work with Paul Tudor Jones, one of the greatest investors in the history of the world. In the biggest market crash in history, 1987, he made 200% when everybody else was losing their entire life. And I've been coaching him continuously now for 24 years, every single day. So I said, I work with the best in the world. And they're telling me based on history in the 30s and history in the 70s, this $8 stock, some are gonna be $1. And I remember the day in March of 2009, Citibank, which had been, I think, $70, sold for 97 cents. You could go and take your money out of the ATM. It cost you more to take your money out than to own the bank, right? And then I told people it'll jump from 99 cents to $6, $10, $12 in a month or two. It's exactly what it did, right? So what you gotta know is corrections happen every year. You got another couple months. You gotta know it's 14% and you won't lose because 80% of the time there's a little bear. Now, what about the bear? The bear market, it happens, to give you an idea, in the last 100 years, every 3 to 5 years. You've gone 8 without them. We're way overdue. But in modern years, last 30 years, it's about every 5 years. The average length of the bear is 1 year. The average drop is 33%. A third of those drops go 40% or above. That, I don't care how well prepared you are, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But it is the greatest opportunity in your lifetime to go from wherever you are financially to where you want to be. I hope your audience is listening right now. Hear me. If you want to leapfrog and you're a millennial and you think there's no future, or you're, a baby boomer and you think you're too old and it's too late, the greatest gift you have is coming. I know it doesn't sound like it. This is not positive thinking bullshit. This is the truth. Wall Street, the stock market, is the only place that when things go on sale, people freak out. If I said, you like Ferraris?
Sure.
If I said to you, Ferraris go on sale for 50% off.
Awesome.
But when I tell you Apple's on sale for 50% off, you go, oh, what am I gonna do here? What's wrong? The whole world's coming to an end. If you think about it, let's assume if you were 35 and you lived to 85, you got 50, 52 years ahead of you. That means you have 52 more corrections to live through.
Right.
That means you're probably in those 50 years gonna have 10 more bear markets to live through. If you're gonna have a gut checks every time or you're gonna leave out of it,
Right.
if you didn't participate because you thought, oh, the market's too volatile, I can't trust it, all that stuff, you missed 250% return in the last 8 years. I mean, you've missed out on everything while you're waiting for things to be better. And if you won't do it when it's like this, when it crashes, you're not gonna get in.
Sure.
So here's the good news about the bear. The good news about the bear, average ones a year. Could be longer, but that's the average. Could be shorter. But here's what's cool. Every single bear market in the history of the United States has led to a bull market. Meaning right afterwards. So 2008, this plummeting, what happened in 2009? Up 67% in the year. I can show you every single bear market, and the next year when it comes out, it's this explosion. Now that's not true in every market in the world. It's true for 2 centuries in the United States.
Wow.
So that's why Warren Buffett says, I want to be greedy when people are afraid. And I want to be afraid when people are greedy. If you remember 2008, he was telling everybody, buy. He was having the time of his life. Buy, everything's on sale. So what you have to do to become unshakable is turn, the metaphor I use is turn the snake into the rope. Meaning, we all know the story, it's the middle of the night, you're walking through the yard or someplace and you see a snake and you're freaked out, you pull back, you come in the morning and it's a rope. Once you know it's a rope, you're never afraid again. I want to take for people investing and show them how to turn that snake into the rope it really is. And I'll tell you one final stat on all this. People always say, and you started to bring it up, timing. I like timing. Right now, things are too expensive, I want to wait. People have been saying that for 8 years. Is there going to be a correction? Yes. But when it corrects, you want to invest again. You'll get dollar cost averaging. If you paid a little too much here, you'll paying less here. It'll bring the average price to a reasonable place. It's going to allow you to succeed. But here's what people need to know about timing. If you are not in the market, it's the most dangerous thing. This is so counterintuitive, so I hope your audience is listening. Let me show you. There's two different research projects. One was done by JP Morgan. I just spoke with them the other day at their Alternative Investments Conference. And to be in the room, there are 400 people. You have to have $1 billion network to get in the room.
Great.
It was mind-boggling, right? So JP Morgan did a study, and also Schwab did a separate study, 20-year studies. In the last 20 years, to give you an idea, the average S&P 500, that index, has produced 8.2%. Over 30 years, it was 10.28. In the last 20 years, a little bit less. Still great. You double your money, roughly you're in a position where you double your money a little more than every, what is it now, 7.2, so it'd be like a little more than 10 years. But here's what they found out. If you miss the 10 best trading days in 20 years, because you're trying to time the market and you're not in it during one of those days, you went from an 8.2% return over that period per annum, per year. It dropped down almost half to 4.5. What are the chances of you knowing the best 10 days to trade in 20 years? None, right? Warren Buffett said, market timers and market forecasters are only there to make fortune tellers look good, because no one can do it successfully. Even if they do it for a while, it doesn't last. It's luck. Jack Bogle told me, he started Vanguard, $3 trillion company. He said, we took gorillas, 1,000 in a room, and had them flip coins, and we said how many times they got heads, how many got tails. Just gorillas flipping them randomly. And he said one gorilla in that set of those turns flipped heads 21 times in a row. Now, when you look at that and see all these gorillas doing it, you look out and say, what a lucky gorilla. He said, but in the hedge fund industry and the mutual fund industry, when somebody does 10 in a row, you go, what a brilliant investor.
Right, what a genius.
And it's just averages and luck at that time.
Yeah.
In fact, he showed me that 96% of all mutual funds fail to match the market over a 10-year period of time. Only 4% make it. They're constantly changing.
Crazy.
So the statistic I want people to know is, if you miss the 20 best trading days in the last 20 years, just 20 days in 20 years, one day a year in 20 years, and you're wrong on timing. Your 8.2 doesn't drop to 4.5, it drops to 2%. You might as well have been owning a bond. You had no had no risk.
Right.
You miss the top 40 trading days, to give you an idea, you are minus 2%. So you got to get in the market. And if you're saying, what about my timing though? The study was done by Schwab. If you got the perfect timing for the year, the right day, the best possible day to buy, some people, the worst day, someone else dollar cost averages, just keeps spending the same amount every month regardless of prices, and somebody stays in cash. Who has the worst return? Cash.
Cash.
You get nothing for cash.
Gotcha.
The guy who was the best had the best timing.
Got it.
The guy that was the worst, the guy that dollar cost average and the one that was on the worst day were almost identical, but after 7 years, there was only a $20,000 difference in accumulated assets between the worst day and the best day. The worst was not being in the market.
Right.
So you got to be there. And I'm not saying put everything in stocks. We teach in the book all these different assets to diversify.
Yeah.
But stocks in the last 2 centuries have provided the highest return. So you have to have significant exposure to that if you want to get the highest return. This is not about trading, it's about investing.
Exactly.
Trading is trying to do that, and most people lose money trading. Even the guys that tell you make money, see it all, they're making money 2 or 3 years from now. They usually eat the dust, right?
Exactly.
So yes, you've got to have the psychology, and my best way of psychology is not to pump you up. If you want to be unshakable, you want to be educated, and you want to know the facts. You want to know, look, every 5 years I'm going to get a bear, maybe 3 years. I'm going to get a correction every year, but I'm going to be in the market and make money. Do you know that 6 of the 10 best trading days in the 20 years happened within 2 weeks of the worst trading day? So when Trump was elected, the market dropped, I think it was 800 points that night. Then at 3 or 4 in the morning, he made a speech where he was somewhat, human and normal. And the market got all its money back, and since then we're up 14% in November, December, January, in 3 months, February, 3.5 months. So people need to understand you got to be in the market, because the worst days will bring you your best days. So Christian G and I were talking, he said something really beautiful to me. He's a dear friend of mine, I've known him for, I guess, about 15 years. His father is one of the most powerful spiritual teachers in India. Oneness. And so, to give you an idea, he's considered an avatar there. So I went there and they had an opening, Christian G helped organize it, and they expected 250,000 people over 5 days, and 500,000 people showed up the first morning. So it was like the ultimate, craziness, if you imagine. So he's got some really beautiful grounding, and his father is not just a religious man, he's really a spiritual man. He believes whatever you believe is wonderful, but what you have to do is wire your brain so that you're connected to the aspect of your spirit or oneness, and he teaches various ways to do this. So anyway, Christian G and I, over the years, have done a lot of fun things together, and this, about 2 years ago, we were having a conversation, and he said, you teach the secret to life is peak state versus lousy state, or being energy rich versus energy poor, that a relationship, you can love somebody, but if the energy's low, it's not gonna show up, the energy's high, it will. He said, what if you swap those words and you swap peak state for a beautiful state? I said, that works. A high energy state is a beautiful state. Any state where your high energy would be like love or joy or gratitude or drive or courage or faith or playfulness or fun. Any of those things are beautiful states. So he goes, yeah, I agree. And I said, and then suffering states would be low energy states. So that would be frustration, sadness, anger, resentment, loneliness, boredom, whatever. He goes, yeah, that's exactly right. So I can swap those. He goes, if you swap them, there's something cool that you might see or do. I said, what's that? He said, I've made a decision that I'm gonna live my life where I'm gonna live in a beautiful state every day, no matter what, even if it rains on my parade, even if people do things that are unjust. He said, the reason is because in a beautiful state, just like you teach peak state, everything flows. And I said, well, that's pretty much what I've been teaching. He goes, yes, but if you think of the lousy states as suffering states, he said, then you can end suffering just by ending the state. And I said, I don't really relate to the word suffering, and I think most achievers do. Most achievers don't even get fearful, we get stressed. I always tell people, fear is the achiever word for stress, because if I follow your stress, it'll take me to your fear. But I realized I didn't relate to suffering. Like if you had told me 2 years ago, Tony, you suffer, it's like, are you kidding me? I got the greatest life, I have the most incredible wife and 4 kids, and I got 31 companies, and I'm financially free, and I have a mission I love, and I'm in good health. And that would all be honest. I wouldn't have been dishonest about it. But what really helped me out of that conversation, I left there and I went, well, where do I suffer? And I realized frustration is suffering. I get frustrated. I get concerned. I get pissed off. I get, worried sometimes. I get these feelings. And so what I decided to do was, just really create a 90-second rule for myself where I would end suffering as it arises. Because anybody tells you you're gonna end suffering is full of crap. The reason is your brain is a 2 million-year-old brain, and it's not designed to make you happy, it's designed to make you survive. But there's no saber-toothed tiger for you to react to anymore, so now we worry about what are people thinking of us, do I have enough money? And in this country, in America, if you are in utter poverty, and I hate poverty, I feed 100 million people a year, so I'm not sitting on the sidelines. But if you make the worst and the least amount of money in this country and you're in total poverty, you're in the 1% of earners on the earth. Because 75% of the planet lives on $2.50 a day, right? So what I try to do is show people you can't build on failure, you can only build on success. So over the last 2 years, what I've done is play this little 90-second rule, and if I feel tension in me, I go, okay, that's suffering, where's it come from? What am I stressed about? What am I concerned about? And what I immediately do is I realize the stressful thought, since I've seen Christian G, I kind of traded one thing. What I really do now is I dig in and I notice that the only time you have stress or suffer is when you believe a stressful thought. So what would be 1 or 2 of the most stressful thoughts that happen to you most often? Because we all have them, right? You can be an overachiever and you still do it. So what would be 2 thoughts that show up a lot that make you stressed? So what I told Christian G is I said, I think I've found the 3 triggers to suffering. He goes, what's that? I said, it's lost, less, never. Whenever you believe, your mind believes a stressful thought like, oh my God, my business is not going, or oh, this guy screwed this up and now I've lost something. I've lost this opportunity, or I've lost the time, or I've lost the money, or it cannot be someone else, it could be you. You could say, I failed to do this. I did something or I failed to do something, and as a result, I've lost something I value, significance, trust, love, money, freedom, whatever. Or you said something or did something or failed to do something, or I failed to do something or say something, and I feel like I have less love, or less money, or less freedom. Less will make you suffer. The one that's worse is never. If you start believing that because she said that, or she did that, or because I failed to do this, or I said that, I'll never have love again, I'll never be wealthy, I'll never be free. Once you believe that shit, it's true, because you won't initiate, you won't solve it, you won't create it. So I'm very sensitive to loss, less, never. Anything that triggers that, and the antidote to it is to realize it's not you. So your thought of, God, my business is stressful, is this gonna, I'm sure it'll make it, but a little more part of you like, is this gonna make it? Right. Or this guy screwed up and look, it screwed me out of all these things. When those things happen and you suffer, it puts you in a mode where what you're really suffering about is yourself. And you were honest about it, thank you for that, I saw you do it. You said, well, I was thinking this guy did this and it cost me this. Yeah. It's the me that makes us suffer.
Yeah.
When a woman will say, I'm really worried about my children, I'm really stressed, she's suffering about her children, and I'll listen to her. I'll say, tell me. She'll say, well, they're not doing this, not doing that. And I'll turn to her usually and say, I hope you can hear yourself, because the real reason you're suffering is not because of your children. It's not because they're not doing well, it's because you think you failed them. It's about you. Because otherwise you'd just be working on the solution.
Right.
But you're busy beating yourself up, feeling bad, thinking the worst case scenario, right? So the antidote to suffering, the antidote to loss less than ever, is appreciation. I always tell people, trade your expectation for appreciation, your whole life changes. So I was just doing this talk here earlier, and I shared with them experience, and I'm fortunate enough to have my own private jet now, but it's a intercontinental jet, so I can fly straight to China. It's bigger than a Gulfstream, it's a Global Express. So it's like having your own bed in the sky. But up until that time, I was chartering. But half my business was overseas, and it's like $400,000 to fly to Australia and back on a Gulfstream. So it didn't make any sense. I finally did well enough. I sold a couple companies, made a couple $100 million, and I went and bought the plane. But before that, I would be so stressed getting on Qantas Airlines to fly to Australia. First class with a bed. I would be so stressed because in my head I go, there's no internet. I'm cut off for 14 hours. I got 31 companies. I mean, I got this list of calls and texts and Slacks and emails, and by the time I get there, it's going to triple in size.
You're going to lose money.
I'd be all stressed out, right? And then one day I'd ask myself, what the F is stressful about sitting or lying when you got to bed, even on a commercial flight like that in first class? And I realized what an idiot I was, but it still grabbed me. You'd still suffer. And I remember one of the last times it happened before I got my plane, ironically, they announced on the air, they said, ladies and gentlemen, we're proud to announce we have international internet. And it was like God descended the airplane. We're all cheering, clapping. It's so wonderful, right? And then within about 9 minutes, the thing broke down. Everybody's pissed. They're like, oh, this is bullshit. I can't believe this. I'm not putting up with this. And I tell a story because 9 minutes before, it was a miracle. Now, after 9 minutes, it's already an expectation. And when you have expectations, you're always miserable. I realized my happiness was so cheap because all I had to do was have this nearby and I could lose my happiness. Because 31 companies, 1,200 employees, 5 continents, I think. Yeah, 5 continents now. 7 different news. What are the chances that right now someone is screwing up something with that many employees? 100%. Yeah. So all I had to do was wait and open up and find the piece there. I was like, I can't believe what the hell is the matter with him. See, I realized all I had to do was have my phone to be stressed. If that's true, my happiness is so cheap. Because what are the chances of everybody doing exactly what you think they should do the right way every day? Zero. What are the chances of the people you love doing what you want them to do the way you want to do them every day? Zero. What are the chances of you doing the right thing every day, even if you're talented and disciplined? Zero. So your happiness will never last as long as it's got expectation behind it. Don't get me wrong, I have businesses, I run them, we manage them, but I know that people are going to screw up, or my idea of screw up is different than I think they should be. And sometimes their screw up will turn into something even better, right? I got to give it room. So what I did was, I began to realize I made the decision, it's the most important decision I believe of your life, that I'm not going to suffer anymore. Life's too short to suffer, and I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day. And the way I do it is, I catch myself when I start to get that sense of stress, I let it go, and I see the idea go by. So your thoughts about this person messing up your business or not following through. If I was in a room with 10,000 people, I guarantee you 60, 70% of the business owners have the same thoughts at times, right? I ask people all the time, tell me your most stressful thought. Oh, I'm worried about my children, this may happen. How many people have had that thought? Everybody. I might not make it financially, blah, blah, blah. How many have had that? Everybody. My point is, it's not your thought. It's the mind, not your mind. When you think it's your mind, you identify with it, and you can't separate from yourself. Right. But when you realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years, and I'm just thinking the same thought that so many people have thought before. Like, how many people have ever thought, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch? Now, you didn't do it because you didn't believe you're really going to kill them, but you felt it, you said it, you were there, right? So we all have thoughts. It's only the stressful thoughts we believe that mess us up. So what I try to show people is, if you can start to realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years. If I told you a million years, 1,000 or 100 years ago that we're going to go to the moon and back, you called me a lunatic or crazy. If I said 100 years ago, you're going to have a little box like this, it'll fit in your pocket, and You can click on it and you can see what the weather is any place. You can click on it and see a live person on the other side of the earth and talk to them by looking in this box. And the way it works is invisible waves are traveling around the earth and it pulls invisible waves in the box. You go like, read between the lines. There's no way, you dumb idiot, it's never gonna happen. So what I want you to realize is thoughts are invisible waves. When you turn on a TV, it takes invisible waves, and depending on the channel, you're gonna see a love story or an adventure or a drama or a comedy or a horror. The way you use your body determines which of those thought waves come through you. One moment you're pissed off, the next moment somebody makes you laugh. You change your body, you change the channel, you change what comes through you. So what I've tried to do in this area of beautiful state is simple. First, identify where you're suffering. What's your favorite flavor? Are you a worrier? Are you a pissed off person?
Stressed, angry.
What is it you do? Second of all, decide you're gonna kill that monster while it's little. You're not gonna wait until it's Godzilla taking the city. You're gonna break the pattern. You start to feel the stress, you see it as thoughts going by, and then you focus on something to appreciate, enjoy, or love. Appreciation, love, and joy destroy suffering. You can't be grateful and angry simultaneously. It's possible. You can't be worried and fearful and grateful simultaneously. So I tell people gratitude is one of the emotions to cultivate that'll destroy the suffering. And that's what we teach people to do. No matter what a good human being you are, when we get in lousy states, we behave in ways, overtly and covertly, not even meaning to, that mess up our relationships. So I felt like I'd be remiss if I wrote a whole book on finance, show you exactly how to get wealthy, and then I didn't show you real wealth. Because there's lots of people. Of the billionaires I'd interviewed, I don't want to grossly be unfair in estimate, but I would say the rarest commodity was somebody who was happy all the time. Somebody like Richard Branson, he is having the time of his life. He is sincerely that, he's hungry, he's driven, he's always growing, he's expanding, he's having fun. His favorite phrase, give it a go, Tone, let's give it a go. But I would say that it is the absolute minority. I tell people what's more rare than a billionaire is someone who's in a beautiful state every day, somebody who's happy every day. You get a new billionaire in the United States every 6 days, dime a dozen. Someone who's really, really, really happy, juicy. Like my goal now, I have a different goal. My goal is I want to find ecstasy in each moment. I want to find something to be passionate about each moment. And I've been living that the last 2 years religiously. In the beginning, my 90-second rule should have been like a 4-hour rule or maybe a 4-day rule. I was really shitty at it. But when you do something again and again, it becomes like a muscle, right? Yeah. And you get good at it, and it'll make you more wealthy than money will. But you don't have to pick. You're going to be wealthy in financial terms and wealthy in emotional terms too, spiritual terms too. Well, I would say health, as strong as it is, I had a real health scare this last year. I think I shared with you. I had mercury poisoning, and Mercury mimics dementia. So it makes you lose your memory in the middle of talking, which I do 50-hour events with 10,000 people and never forget a thought. And I've had over the last year where I literally don't know where I am and what's going on in the middle of being in the room. Now, no one's seen it or known it. I ask afterwards because I'm pretty good at hiding it, but my mind works so fast I can put something else in there. But that's been really rough. And then the other part, and so you feel vulnerable. It's happened twice when I was speaking today. Now, like, did I say this before? Because I've done a bunch of interviews. And so it popped in my head just for a moment. Did I say that? I'm not sure I said that. And so just for a moment, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to only being here with you or with them. I'm not in my head. So I'm down. I went from 123 in mercury on a 0 to 5 scale. It was the highest mercury they measured, where they thought I should be dead. And it took me a year, and I'm down to now 9 on a 0 to 5 scale. So it's still there, but I'm almost done. So there's great vulnerability in that. But I don't, outside the physical, I really don't feel that, and I'm not being like I'm indestructible or some bullshit like that. It's just, everything is a habit. Worrying is a habit. Fear is a habit. I'm pretty comfortable in who I am. I'm 56 years old and 57 in a few days. I've lived a lot of life, so I've buried, 3 fathers and a mother. I've been told I have a tumor in my brain, I'm gonna die. I've had companies that were near the edge financially and was able to turn them around. I've faced enough things right now that it's not I'm so strong or cool or some shit. It's just that I've faced all those things so many times that my threshold of control is much higher than most people's. Because, I made it through how do I keep the doors open? I need $50,000 and I don't have $50,000 to $5 million to at one point $120 million I needed because 2 of my partners went broke and I was holding the bag, to now I'm doing $5 billion. And I only did that because I made it through those thresholds. So I'm pretty comfortable with most things, but I think there's vulnerability in health, and also I love my wife so much I can't imagine losing her, and she's in good health, but those things would feel vulnerable to me. I have chosen very consciously what I want for my life, and I continue to choose. I really believe that our Creator has given us choice. And those that, look at their life and say it's not the way they want it and blame God are barking up the wrong tree. The resources are inside of us. That's number one. But I'd say number two, this idea that, rationalizing choice. I don't rationalize choice. I know it's one of the great gifts in my life, and I can make it any moment. So can you. The one power we have is the decision to change anything. Like your relationship, change it. Change you first, or change it. You don't like your body, change it. You don't like your finances, any one of us can change it. We live in a world that's filled with answers. You got a web where you can learn from anybody on the planet now. You got access to them, So I don't see it as like rationalizing choice. I think that mindset reveals limitations to the person asking the question. I'm not being derogatory to that person. I'm grateful for the question, but I want you to know, if you're listening, that, if I asked all those watching, we all have patterns, and I'm a student of patterns. The way I can make changes in minutes for people that were stuck for years, or athletes I've turned around and developed a great amount of fame around, and the Quincy Joneses of the world, the Pit Bulls, the Serena Williams, the things that I've done with all these people they rave about are because I know that whatever you focus on, you're gonna feel. So I'll just give you one example for the person who asked this question, and for anybody listening. I'll give you 3 patterns real fast so you can check yourself out for a moment. So one pattern is of focus. Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what's missing? I'm asking your listeners right now, and you, what do you tend to focus on? What you have or what's missing? When I ask this in a room, usually about 70% are focused on what's missing. Most achievers are focused on what's missing so they can go out and achieve more, right? Nothing wrong with that. But when you stack these patterns together, it's really hard to be happy when you're constantly focused on what's missing. There's a time when what's missing to go to work, but you do it all the time. You can be achieving a ton on some of these billionaires, and they're still noticing what's missing, and so they're not happy. Another pattern would be, do you tend to focus on what you can control and what you can't control? The majority of people is what they can't control. Now, if you focus on what's missing all the time and what you can't control, you're gonna be depressed. I don't care if you take Prozac or Zoloft or anything else. Your depression is not a Zoloft deficiency. It is the fact that you were doing something in your mind that is producing that depression. And if you constantly focus on what's missing and what you can't control, then let's add a third one. Do you tend to focus more on things in the past, the present, or the future? I know you do all 3, we all do all 3, but which one for you would you say you spend more of your time on? There's no right or wrong, but the past, you can't do anything about it. So the more you focus there, unless you're learning something from it, it's pretty much a waste. The present is where the joy is. The future is how you do business, right? So you anticipate. So it's the ability to do this. But if you have someone whose pattern is focus on what's missing, focus on what you can't control, focus on the past, you can give them, I've seen it. I've dealt with people like that who are suicidal. I come in, they got every drug, they're taking every antidepressant, and they're still depressed. In fact, I'll ask in audiences all the time, how many of you know somebody who takes antidepressants and still depressed? 90% of the room will raise their hand.
I know people.
You know people? I'm sure the people at home do. Well, why are they still depressed if they're taking antidepressant? Because all the antidepressant does is numb you, but they're still focusing what's missing. They're still focused on what they can't control. They're still focused on past or present that's not the way they want it to be, or making up a future that's scary. Well, you're gonna be depressed no matter what unless you take control of those factors. So the answer to this question is, I don't see it as a rationale. I see it as a gift. Choice is a gift. It's always there. You can choose what you focus on, and what you focus on is what you're going to experience. You can focus on things that make you suffer. You can focus on things that make you grateful. And of the two, gratitude is the better approach. It's not some namby-pamby positive thinking approach. It's intelligent, because when you're in a good state, you can solve the problem 10 times better. I used to convince myself that if I'm suffering, if I'm pissed, I'm 10 times smarter, my brain goes faster, and it does. You know what I also found? I'm 10 times smarter when I'm not stressed, and I also enjoy my life
Your
more.
body doesn't hurt, your mind is
and everybody else, you're able to reach them because they're not defensive.